The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Patriots look to extend their winning streak while the Bucs look to come out of their bye week hot. We're going to start things off with the Patriots because this is a really, really interesting matchup based on where these two teams are right now, how they've been playing over the course of the last month or so. But you have the Bucs coming out of the bye. You have the Patriots getting ready to play this road game and then be on a short week and play on Thursday night. So I'll kick it to you first. What is the biggest story right now for the New England Patriots? Outside of maybe Drake Maye being one of the MVP leaders in the NFL. Quite a fun surprise there.
Well, I actually think it is Maye, and it's not because of, the MVP stretch that he has had. If you go back to, what happened last weekend, James, I think that was Drake's toughest game probably since the Pittsburgh game where he had multiple turnovers. The Atlanta defense kind of got to him a little bit. He made some mistakes. He wasn't seeing the field necessarily great. He made some interesting decisions, leaving the pocket early, missing some open guys. And he said, during Wednesday's meeting with the media that there are a lot of sacks that he has taken. And he said, a lot of them are on me. And he's right. So I think people are interested, James, to see how Drake Maye responds after maybe his rockiest game in a while. I don't want to say it was a terrible game because it wasn't. If you wanted to grade it, you'd probably grade it a C. So, how's he feel going on the road against Tampa? Tough defense to face, tough defensive front. And, don't forget, Kayshon Boutte not practicing on Wednesday. Doesn't sound like he's going to practice or play this weekend. And Kayshon Boutte's been very critical to this offense.
Yeah, selfishly, from a fantasy standpoint, I was hoping that the top story was going to be the Travion Henderson breakout. We haven't gotten that yet, but Drake Maye's been a lot of fun to watch. I know a lot of Bucs fans were dialed in to that game because they were rooting for the Patriots. They wanted to see the Falcons get beat. And it was a super entertaining game. And it was kind of a tale of two halves, right? This was a Patriots team that came out and just dominated the first half. And then the Falcons slowly worked their way back, thanks in large part to the play of Drake London. But I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, and obviously you can shed more light on this, it seems like when you get the right fit at the top, it just changes the entire landscape of what this team is capable of. And I think that Vrabel has brought that. And I know I personally have wondered, could Mac Jones have been doing this same thing with this coaching staff? Because Mac Jones has been a solid quarterback. And you look at all these young quarterbacks across the league where teams give up on them or coaches move on because they're fighting for their job. But kind of what has Vrabel meant for this Patriots team this year that is rattled off 6 straight wins?
Oh, he's meant a ton. He's meant a ton, James. When you look at the culture that he is setting in New England, after last year, which was a debacle in every sense of the word, I mean, you just can't imagine a head coach handling as many things badly as Gerard Mayo did, unfortunately for Gerard. And that's off, letting Bill Belichick go and back-to-back 4-win seasons. Mike Vrabel walked in and, it's not like he's won a Super Bowl as a coach, but he did take Tennessee to the AFC Championship game. He has won at a decent level as a head coach in the league. I think he's a well-respected guy. Players seem to love to play for him, and he's been able to get the most out of some of these guys already. And, his messages seem somewhat simple, but they're consistent, and he has really good relationships with his players and his coaches. He treats them like human beings. And he connects on a human level. It's not all great, of course. He also gets after them. He criticizes them. He's a tough coach. He's not an easy coach, but he's able to kind of get to the ground level with these guys. And he just built a belief. And you look back at week 5, the win against the Buffalo Bills, I feel like was really the moment where they said, hey, we could actually be a good football team this year. Because up until that point, it wasn't like you were awesome, right? You lost to Vegas in a game that wasn't good. And then, you look at Miami. You won a game in Miami, which was nice, but Miami had its own issues going on. You needed some breaks in that game. Pittsburgh, you turn the ball over 5 times and you give the game to the Steelers. And then you had Carolina. And at that time, Carolina was seen as, are they really a serious program at the time? That win looks better in hindsight with what Carolina's done. It was really that Buffalo win on the road, Sunday Night Football. And it was also, let's not get it twisted. Mike Vrabel's important. But as we know, James, in the NFL, you need a quarterback to win games. And Drake Maye's level, him getting to the level that he has gotten to this early has been a surprise, a pleasant one. But I'd say, that's really the main reason this team has won football games, because the quarterback's literally been one of the top 5 or 6 in the game.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of fun watching Drake Maye. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up against the Bucs this week. But you mentioned Kayshon Boutte. I had some speculation on an episode earlier this week about Christian Gonzalez. The Patriots are not coming into this fully healthy. And as it has been all season long, the top story for the Buccaneers is the injury problem. So Bucky Irving, Chris Godwin, and Hassan Reddick all missed practice on Wednesday. Things don't sound overly optimistic when it comes to their status for Sunday's game. Todd Bowles was asked about Bucky and Godwin. He said they're both running, but Bucky specifically still has not taken any contact with that injured shoulder. He also spoke about how there's going to be a little bit of a ramp-up period before they return to the field. So it looks like they'll probably have to wait at least one more week before either of those two guys return to the offense. Of course, you have starting right tackle Luke Gedeke. The 21-day window has opened for him to return from injured reserve. I don't expect him on Sunday as well. But looking ahead, that's obviously big positive news for the Bucs. Now, I've talked a lot about Bucky and what his return could mean for the offense. And if that isn't going to be this week, unfortunately, that could spell trouble for the Bucs. Rashad is averaging just 3.7 yards per carry, and he does have 4 touchdowns, but over the last 2 games, 73 yards on 23 carries. Going against one of the best run defenses in the NFL, looks like things are going to be on the arm of Baker Mayfield, as well as the protection of the offensive line. Baker struggled the last couple of games due to injury and protection issues. The Bucs will likely be rolling with the same weapons that they've had for the last game and a half with Mike Evans out. So that's to say it'll be Rashad and Sean Tucker in the backfield, and then Emeka Egbuka and a bunch of other guys at receiver.
Yeah, I love Emeka Egbuka coming out of Ohio State. He was one of, if not my favorite receivers in the draft. I thought it was a home run pick. Absolutely love the guy. There's just so much that he can do, but I know he's dealing with the hammy, and that seemed to hamper him last weekend or 2 weeks ago against the Saints. I watched that game on the All-22 this week, and, look, Baker wasn't great. I pretty much saw him as kind of like a neutral. If you look at the plus plays and the minus plays, he pretty much was even. But a lot of that was not his fault to me. A lot of it was, as you mentioned, the protection issues were rather obvious. I thought Graham Barton was horrendous in that game. And you look at, the receivers, they just weren't consistently getting open. You would look at a play, and even when Baker had time, guys weren't necessarily open for him. So you mentioned the run game, and that's the one thing about the Patriots defense that has been up and down, and they've shown some vulnerability, and they could be without Christian Ellis, who is one of their, top 2 or 3 linebackers. That position has not necessarily been great. So we'll see if he actually plays. That could be a hit for them. But, the one thing about the defense that they have done week in, week out, no matter who they're playing, is stop the run. They've been dominant. And thanks to Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, Harold Landry, those 3 guys on the defensive line have been really good against the run. So I do think, if you're a Bucs fan and you're going into Sunday, I would be stunned if the Bucs could consistently run the football against this defense, because that's really been their calling card consistently from week 1 up until right now.
Yeah, and it hasn't been slouches that they've been shutting down. They have shut down every running back that they've come across. Bijan, James Cook. They've really done an absolutely phenomenal job.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Chris, what's up, man? How you doing? Are you excited for this matchup?
Oh, heck yeah, I'm excited. It's always really fun, especially, Justin Herbert brings the star power. Jim Harbaugh, classic coach against Mike Tomlin, another classic coach. And it's kind of interesting since, for the last, 8 years, it seems like whoever's the home team has found a way to win this matchup. Outside of, I think there was one time where the Steelers won when it was like at the soccer stadium when they were.
I think that was the Duck Hodges game, man.
Duck Hodges game, yeah. That's like the only time. But like whenever it's actually been like actual fans being like a real stadium, the home team has won. The San Diego Chargers won it in 2015 a while back, and then the Steelers won it in 2018 in Pittsburgh. The Chargers won in Pittsburgh in 2018. But since then, the Steelers won the last time at Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium in 2024. And then 2021, you had that crazy shootout, 41-37. So it's been an interesting back and forth between these two teams. But I do think it's going to be interesting because both of these teams, like you said, are vying for playoff spots in what I think is becoming a more crowded AFC playoff race. And both of them have dealt with injuries, but granted, to the point that you were making in the opening, the Chargers' injuries to the offensive line, that's a huge part of what this team is supposed to be good at, was having those two superstar tackles in, and not having them, though they trade for Trevor Penning, could be a problem against the Steelers' pass rush that might have woken up last week from a lot of troubles they've been having.
Yeah, I think you would say that for sure. But Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And we have to start with the biggest story. But yeah, to your point, I mean, you have the Le'Veon Bell Wildcat walk-off touchdown, several years ago. You have the shootout last time, 41-37, and a Big Ben, Justin Herbert thriller. But going into this matchup, what do you think the biggest story is for the Steelers?
The biggest story is the defensive shift that they've made, and I wrote about that in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go check that out at post-gazette.com, where I break down the film of this. But the Steelers went from a team that wanted to live in single high safety looks, where they played a lot of man coverage and trusted guys to just live on islands, and then blitzed a whole lot, to a team that plays a lot of two shell safety looks, where they could be aggressive and underneath coverage, but not have to live particularly on islands. And then they didn't blitz as much. And that shift disrupted what, the people who do the advanced analytics stuff said was the most efficient offense looking like in NFL history since they've started analyzing efficiency offense. That's in the Colts offense that still, I believe, leads the NFL in points scored and yards gained and yards per play, because they've been highly efficient this year in how they've moved the ball and how they've got in the end zone. On only 2 of their 11 drives last week did they make it into the red zone. And the Steelers defense disrupted what they wanted to do in the run game, what they wanted to do in the quick passing game. And that's what's different right now. If you're looking at the Steelers pass rush numbers, as you were talking, Daniel, before the show, and you asked me, how are their pass rush numbers so terrible? They're giving up the most passing yards in the league. Well, partially it's because I think all year they were kind of going on this plan where they were saying, hey, we have the man cover corners who can just be really sticky in coverage, and we can just blitz aggressively and send all these angles at you. But the problem was when they're in these man coverage, these guys, Jalen Ramsey, still dangerous, still tough, but Darius Slay, mindful of his skills, they don't have the same shutdown speed that they used to in their primes. And so they are giving up a lot more underneath quick passes. And that's what quarterbacks were kind of living on against the Steelers, especially Joe Flacco and Jordan Love in back-to-back weeks. They were just quick throws, and then they hit on the occasional deep bomb. But a lot of their offense was built on getting off the quick throw, getting the easy yards, and it keeping the pass rush from ever getting home. Well, against the Colts, that changed. They ran 2 high safeties, which meant those corners, they could jump a few more passes underneath. They could try to press you a little bit more. And if they got beat, they knew they had safety help. And that forced that forced Daniel Jones to hold on to the ball a little bit more. He got sacked, I think, 5 times in that game, through 3 interceptions, had 2 sack strip fumbles that the Steelers recovered. They were just all over it. And that's the kind of defense this team wants to play. They want to stuff your run, they want to rush your quarterback, and they want to force mistakes that they're opportunistic on and cause turnovers. The Steelers' 2 best wins, I think, this season have been the Patriots and Colts, the 2 top seeds in the AFC, and both times they forced at least 5 turnovers. That's the ticket to this game. And if I'm the Chargers, I need to find a way to get this run game going. I need to find a way to get this quick pass game going, and I need to find a way to disrupt that pass rush from getting active and disrupting Justin Herbert. That's when the Steelers are at their best.
Yeah, easier said than done. You know what I mean? I mean, that is, of course, the Steelers figuring it out, kind of finding the formula the week before they play the Chargers isn't great news. But at least the Chargers have some tape on it now, right? Because it definitely seemed to disrupt the Colts and what they were doing last week. That being said, you still have to go out there and stop the hottest running back in the league, and they did that very well. Also, just turned Daniel Jones back into a pumpkin, and the Chargers saw it a couple of weeks ago where, the Colts ran through them like a buzzsaw and put up 38 on him, and the Chargers just couldn't keep up in a shootout type of a game, turned the ball over twice, which didn't help him either. But I think for me, the biggest story is, especially considering what the Chargers are dealing with, is just like, can Justin Herbert carry this team enough to go beat what I think is another good team? And what I saw last week was a defense that looks like a good defense again, because like you said, quarterbacks have been able to have their way a little bit with the Steelers, but with the shift last week, maybe that's coming a little bit back down to earth, because as it stood, it was 4 out of 5 games where quarterbacks were throwing for at least 340 yards against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And the last time Justin Herbert played them healthy, he had 382 passing yards and 90 rushing yards. The 90 rushing yards is an interesting point, because if it's a lot of man coverage, things would be a little easier for Justin Herbert to find the time to be able to scramble and do what he's done really well this year, which is have the most rushing yards out of any quarterback in the entire NFL. That feels like a little harder to do against a more zone-heavy look that maybe the Steelers are going with this week. But also, you have a guy in Justin Herbert who is the king of the cover 2 hole shot, right down the sideline. You saw the Colts go to that quite a bit last week with Alec Pierce and some other guys, Michael Pittman at times, trying to find the in-between of those zones and being able to attack that area of the field. Justin Herbert can do that. He can only do it if he's standing up, right? And I think that is the biggest thing, is just like, can Justin Herbert keep up the magic act? Can he keep playing Houdini in the pocket and giving this Chargers offense a chance? Because their offense, especially without Omarion Hampton, has been very hit or miss when the running game goes. And Christopher, I just think that, man, like, it's asking a lot for Justin Herbert to go out and beat this Steelers defense on his own, but it also feels at the same time like that's kind of what it's going to have to take for the Chargers to get a win.
I think that's the big thing here is Justin Herbert. I think he has a lot of potential that hasn't had a chance to shine too bright, because there's a lot of superstar talented quarterbacks in the AFC. You think back since 2017, the AFC has been represented by 3 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl: Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and one time Joe Burrow. And it's wild to think that, but it's just been that blown up. And that kind of pushes off to the side Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who feel like they're having their own Super Saiyan battle going on, right? So totally. then Justin Herbert's just like, hey, I'm here too. That's kind of what it's been. But I think that's the shame of the situation for the Chargers right now. I really think Justin Herbert's doing a really good job handling situations right now for the Chargers. I mean, you see him, whether he's blitzed or not blitzed, he has the same touchdown interception ratio. He's trying to manage things. He doesn't have the run game that Jim Harbaugh wanted to have, with the investment into Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris to have this thing, the investment they put in this O-line. It's just kind of wild to see all that. And so that puts a dent in things. But I think that what the Chargers look at, if you can find a way to get this run game going, catch the Steelers off guard with some alignments that maybe you haven't used some before, and get the run game going, that's the kind of stuff that can start to open up weaknesses in the Steelers defense, to open up the short passing game. And when you get the short passing game going, then that pass rush can't figure you out, because that's what they're trying to do right now. They don't move TJ Watt around a whole lot. They'll keep him over the right tackle for most of the game, but they will move Nick Herbig, the third-year pass rusher out of Wisconsin. They will move Alex Highsmith. They will blitz different off-ball linebackers. They will send the occasional corner blitz, but they'll also drop one of these guys randomly into coverage, and like that's what kind of caught Daniel Jones off guard with one of his interceptions. He thought that he had an underneath receiver, and Peyton Wilson was just sitting there waiting for the pass. And that's where Justin Herbert's going to have to be careful as he goes through his reads. The Steelers are trying to trick you into, at least last week, they're trying to trick you into the quick pass that you judge way too quickly, and they just jump all over it, and then they're being opportunistic. If Justin Herbert allows the Steelers defense to create turnovers, that's the exact kind of football Mike Tomlin is engineering as a head coach right now.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
San Francisco 49ers, Los Angeles Rams, part 2 already in week 10.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It was 5 weeks ago, week 5, the San Francisco 49ers kind of shockingly, after some big injuries, go down to LA, short week, Thursday night football, and were victorious and won over the Los Angeles Rams. And that was a wild game. There was a lot of weird twists and turns in that football game. And it's always fun when these two teams get together. So 5 weeks later, the Rams have not lost since. In fact, have hardly given up any points since. I think 20 combined points, which is fewer than they allowed in that one game against the 49ers. So a nice little run. What's the biggest storyline right now with these Rams coming into week 10?
Yeah, it's funny, Brian. Like you said, it felt like the Rams were set up to kind of have. It's never easy, obviously, but it was certainly the field was tilted in the Rams' direction going into that one. And the first half, I think it was the worst half of football that the Rams have played all season long. They could not get anything done. They had no answers for Mac Jones, and they've been really, really good since, on both sides of the ball. I think as far as the biggest storylines go, I quite frankly, I've talked about this with everybody on all the crossovers all season long after about that San Francisco game. So I kind of lose track of who I've said it to and who I haven't said it to. Rams can't kick at all. At all. They can't. They basically have stopped even trying to do it. They missed another kick against New Orleans last week. They played 9 games. They've missed 8 kicks, which is just crazy. And they brought in another kicker this week to have a little competition with Josh Carty. They brought in a former long snapper for the Rams, Jake McQuaid, that's coming in to kind of push Alex Ward a little bit. We'll see whether or not they make a change by the time it comes to Sunday. But I think, the Niner-Ram matchup always seems that the Rams always have weird games against the Niners. They don't quite look like themselves when they go up against a Kyle Shanahan team. But for me, at least, going into this one, it's whether or not, A, do they use the new kicker or the long snapper or both, or do they continue to do the inexplicable, which is run those same guys out there who have been terrible all season long?
Wow, good old-fashioned kicking competition mid-season. And for a team that's 6-2 right now, trying to go win a division, that's not good when the kicks aren't going through the uprights. And I know the 49ers and 49ers fans that are listening to this know the feeling, because we went through some weird stuff here in San Francisco with the kicking game, and have now settled on, everyone was changed in the offseason with the special teams for the 49ers. New special teams coordinator. They brought in a new long snapper, new punter, Thomas Morstead, and then ended up changing kickers mid-season. Eddie Pinheiro has been as accurate as you can be since he was signed by the San Francisco 49ers. So all of a sudden, Niners special teams is actually playing at a pretty high level. And was it a blocked kick, or was it just a miss? Something happened in the Niners game with the Rams too.
I believe, and I'm going a little bit by memory here, I believe it might have been both.
Yeah.
if I'm going back, it was certainly at least a miss. Maybe somebody got a figure on it. what's so crazy, like you mentioned, the Rams are 6-2. They're good. I mean, they've got a really good offense. Their defense is, I think, better than anybody really realized. And you mentioned they've only given up a small couple of handfuls of points in the last 5 weeks. But the 2 games they have lost are both directly connected to their inability to make kicks. You know what happened in the San Francisco game, and they lost in Philadelphia where they had not one, but they had 2 kicks blocked in the fourth quarter. Yeah. So, if they make the Rams probably should be 7-1. They beat the Colts. They probably shouldn't have. They got a weird guy fumbled out of the back of the end zone going across the goal line situation. They probably should have lost that game, but they probably should have won the other 2. And we're not asking, 58-yard field goals at the buzzer. You're asking this guy to make PATs and 40-yarders, and they're just not making them.
Well, Cardi was supposed to break the league with the kickoffs too, right? And the spinning kickoffs, and I know it's worked to some degree, but you got to be able to hit the field goals too.
Well, it's funny. There's a theory that's kind of knocking around the Rams universe that part of the reason he's having so much trouble making PATs and field goals is because of that kickoff. That the stroke, for lack of a better word, to deliver that kind of knuckleball kickoff that he's been doing has affected his ability to kick. In fact, last week they had Ethan Evans, their punter, kick off a handful of times as well, I think in an effort to kind of just lock Cardi back into being able to make his kicks. But it didn't work because he missed another one. And, depending on who you ask, some people say it's the long snapper. Some people say that it's the protection. Some people think that it's Cardi. And when you're hearing that many people blame that many people, my guess is it's everybody. I think that there's Chase Blackburn, their special teams coach, is certainly largely to blame. And I've said this, my everydayers have heard me say this, Brian. At this point, I think it's Sean McVay's fault that he hasn't changed it. Like that he hasn't changed the special teams coach, that he hasn't changed the kicker, that he's let this continue as long as he has without addressing it. Now it's become a head coaching problem.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, the head coaches, they're, especially these offensive minds, they don't want to worry about special teams. They don't want to think about it. That was part of the process with the 49ers drafting Jake Moody in the 3rd round. It's like, okay, who's the best kicker? Let's draft the best kicker and just be done with it. And turns out, no, you're not done with it. You're never done with it. And I think that's how some of these coaches would like to treat special teams. And sometimes it shows. And actually, there's so many intricacies in. We had a really good conversation here on Locked On 49ers with Tabor Pepper, who was the former long snapper, and brought him in. We talked a little bit about it. It happened to just be right when the Jake Moody stuff was going down. And he talked about how different it can be with the snap and the timing that goes on with that and how different holders hold. And so you get a new snapper and a new kicker, and it just can completely change the whole dynamic. And maybe that's what the Rams need. But this is another game. He's got to do something. You can't have a 53-man roster and everybody putting everything into it, the coaching staff, and the game comes down to a kick, and you're not confident that the kicker is going to be able to come through. And so we saw an overtime game with the Niners, and it's going to be close again, probably. That's just the way things are. Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and wouldn't that be fun? As far as matchups go in this one, what matchups are you looking at with the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers? And we kind of skipped over the 49ers' biggest story, talking about the special team stuff in the first segment. But, with the 49ers, it's been the same storyline every week too. And it's been all the injuries. And the 49ers lost another one, first round defensive end in Michael Williams is now done for the year. So he joins Bosa. He joins Fred Warner on that defense. And they did bring in it wasn't a deadline day move. I think 49ers fans were a little disappointed they didn't do an actual big move on the deadline with some of these big blockbusters that happen around the league. Rams were pretty quiet as well. But they did bring in Keon White, a big athletic defensive lineman, fell out of favor with the Patriots. And so there's hope that Clelin Ferrell, who they brought in, who the Niners are familiar with, and Keon White can give the 49ers a little bit something up front. But, a pass rush, somebody that can get home and maybe cause a little bit of uncomfortability for Matthew Stafford, who's just dealing right now. That would be real nice for this 49ers defense, who haven't been able to put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really been kind of clicking for the Rams this year is their ability to protect Matthew Stafford. Like he's gotten sacked here and there, but he really hasn't been under consistent pressure for most of the year. And I was kind of doing a little bit of some research on, has anybody ever won an MVP for the first time at 37 years old? We've seen guys like Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning win them, but they'd won them previously. So the answer is Rich Gannon did it at 37 for the Raiders. So there is a little bit of precedent there. Matthew Stafford, he won the Super Bowl here. He's been really good for the Rams here. And this is as well as I've ever seen him play. He is just absolutely on fire right now. 9 touchdowns, no interceptions in his last 2 games. He's kind of doing whatever he wants. He's throwing the no-look passes. The Devontae Adams and Matthew Stafford connection that I think the last time we spoke, Brian, wasn't quite what we were hoping it would be. It was one of those, it's okay. It's not like it's been like nothing and it's like, what the heck's going on? But it's also was one of those, it felt like they were kind of stuck in second gear. They're not stuck in second gear anymore. Like they've really started to figure that out, especially inside the red zone. Devontae Adams, in short areas is almost unguardable. And that's a weapon that the Rams really have not had ever with Sean McVay. They've had really good wide receivers, whether it's Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Robert Woods, even OBJ for a period of time. Like they've had a lot of guys go through there, but they haven't had anybody that can do what Devontae Adams does. So I'm really curious to see if that continues to get better week to week. And then that offensive line to come back where we started, that Rob Havenstein missed a lot of time. He came back last week. He looked better, but still a little, he's just been around a long time. He's the last of the remaining St. Louis Rams that are still here. So it's that Warren McClendon filled in for him for a couple of weeks and did, whenever you don't say somebody's name on the offensive line, that means they're doing a pretty good job. I don't think we mentioned him once while he was in there, which is a testament to how well he played. But I think as far as matchups for me go, when I look at these two things, and I don't know if this qualifies technically speaking, but I think it's McVay versus Kyle Shanahan. That Sean McVay, I wouldn't trade him for any other coach in the league. However, this seems to be the one puzzle that he cannot figure out. Like I go back to the last time they played earlier in the year, and it felt like, this is as close as you're going to get to a game that feels like this is going to go our way no matter what happens. And Kyle Shanahan figured out a way to make Mac Jones tear the Rams up. And the Rams kind of figured it out a little bit in the second half, but Sean McVay has been slow to adapt to what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do to him. And I'm curious to see what happens next. It felt like last year that script kind of got flipped a little bit, especially in that rain game. I think it was the second game of the season last year. I think it was Thursday night. The final score was like 12-9 or something weird like that. And the Rams finally okay, we cracked this code. We know how to play against this team. And then this year, just boom, right back to the way that it was.